All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to The Climb, the StarCraft II podcast focused on the below masters blue collar leagues. I, once again, am your host, Will, aka Lord Cranial.
Hello, my name is Dan. I go by Captain Hoppa. Each episode, we will dive into the ups and downs of the Diamond Ladder experience while searching for the secrets to get good.
Yeah, we're just two normal players who are just working on climbing to that next rung of the ladder, and we hope you enjoyed this discussion tonight.
Today's topic will be about dealing with burnout. I think burnout is a very common problem that a lot of StarCraft players deal with. And we're going to talk about what causes it, what can help deal with it, and just the idea in general. But before we dive into this topic, I have a question for you, Will. How's the ladder been treating you?
So, actually, this week I don't have much to discuss when it comes to ladder. I've been a bit busy with some life stuff, so most of my training has been coming from customs with friends, especially through NSGSL.
Sure.
But there hasn't really been that much laddering recently, unfortunately. I haven't even placed for the new season yet.
Yeah, yeah, that's all right. Um, how
I
how are the
do.
customs going?
The customs are actually going pretty good, and that's where I'm going to be drawing my highlights and lowlights.
Sure.
Uh, I mean, speaking of which, we could go ahead and dive into my highlights and lowlights if you want.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm ready.
So I'll start with the low light because this is a bit embarrassing. But I was I went into a practice session not really mentally prepared for, or not in the mental space to actually practice. I kind of
Yeah.
came into it frustrated and I was already annoyed right from the get go. And I believe I was practicing with Brad that night. And I'm doing the normal thing in TVP. You're getting your mind drop prepared. You're getting into the three racks. You're trying to make sure that stalkers don't like blink on top of your bunker and kill it.
Yeah.
And I had an adept just walk right in. And usually I'm pretty good about blocking the adept with the supply depots. And I, I just said nope, and a GG out. I wasn't I was just in a bad mood, and it really came out when I saw that adept come in. I was just like, "Fuck."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, I definitely have that same thing. If I'm like sleep deprived, I just have no I have no resiliency, where it's just like, well, this isn't the start I wanted, so see you later.
Yeah, it's kind of weird whenever you're kind of in that like you're not in that good mindset and you like expect perfection out of you. It's such a weird dynamic, honestly. Like if I was just vibing and an adept came in and be just be like, oh well, I'm gonna deal with that real quick and just continue on. But if you come in and you're just like I had a bad day and I'm going to have a bad day practicing, and then you just like suddenly expect for stuff to just go right.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too because I've definitely had like sessions where I'm like, well, I'm kind of in bad shape, either like mentally or like sleep quality or whatever, but I go in being like, okay, I don't have huge high expectations, but then like as soon as I get in a game and something goes wrong, I can't handle it the same way I can on the better days, and it's not, and again, I'm very aware that like I'm going in to like not play my best probably, but that's still it doesn't change how I feel when it does not when I'm expecting it and it still goes wrong, right?
No,
Um
absolutely. Absolutely.
and you're kind of powerless in a way.
Yeah, it's usually when, people are going to start, rage queuing into games. It's just like, damn it. All right, next one. Let's just go. Um, and I kind of had a similar experience that night. I was just like, crap. All right. Well, I don't want to deal with this next game.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
well,
even,
and I think that's okay. Like I think sometimes too leaving a game early is not the biggest of deals. Like it kind of drives me crazy sometimes when people in my chat tell me that I left too early. because it's like, well, sure, but I don't want it.
Who's
Like I
driving
don't.
this damn bus right now?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like yeah, the situation is, not ideal, but I also just don't want to play from this position. Like I don't want to do this laborious effort to spend an extra 8 minutes in the game when I'm like clearly behind and clearly not in the position that allows me to apply what I want to apply, right? And yeah,
Yeah,
just let him have it. Like, hey, this guy, he wants it more than me. I'll
yeah,
give it to him. And I'm totally fine with that. And it saves me a lot of mental anguish, right? Because this happens to me a lot in mech games too, where it's like, you know what? That was the third bad fight I took in a row. The tank count has just gone up by 6. I'll let him have it. I'll let him have it. And they're like, well, you weren't dead. You're still mining off, 4 bases. And I'm like, yeah, but he can have it.
yeah. I've actually had games like that versus the mass widow mine raven players, where like because you have to be very careful crossing the field just because there are going to be widow mines littered everywhere. And at any points, like the ravens could pop out of nowhere and just drop a ton of turrets and kill off an expansion. But and I know personally how to deal with it, and it's not too difficult. It's just tedious and time consuming. But sometimes you'll hit that 15 minute and you get dropped with a bunch of turrets again, and you're just like, nah, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I could literally be spending my time better playing against normal players, or quote unquote normal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think it's also when you have that understanding of like what it takes to get back into the game, it kind of allows you to be like, let's not. So I totally relate to that. It's okay to leave games early. Do it to protect yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially if you're already kind of in a bad mood or just not in a very productive mood, and you're like trying to just grind some games out, or you're looking for something specific to practice. Um, yeah, just honestly, there's nothing wrong with leaving those types of games. It's like I said before, it's going to be tedious, it's going to be time consuming. And realistically, you could probably bang out, 3 15-minute games versus, 45 minutes of dealing with a Protoss player that's sitting on top of batteries with Disruptor Tempest.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only benefit you'll get from there is just raging more at Protoss, right? Like you're not gonna like, okay, you might get a little value out of some army positioning stuff or some resource management stuff, but it's kind of these one of these things where like your will has been broken and you're just gonna be more mad. So
Well, here's the
let them
thing,
have it.
even if there is a valuable lesson to learn from those things, you can also grab a practice partner, go into the what is it called? The unit tester, and practice it that way rather than having to like go up to that 30 minutes with this person. And I don't know, sometimes it just doesn't seem like there's too much value to it. I mean, it does kind of help you or give you better endurance in the long run, but if you're looking for those type of interactions, just go to the unit tester with a friend.
Yeah, and I do think there is value to learning how to play from behind, right? Or learning how to play with a disadvantage or lacking map control or something like that. But you don't have to do that every day. Like it's exhausting. It's exhausting, man. It's
It really
exhausting. I mean,
is.
but you should try to make comebacks here and there, but there are days where I just don't have the energy.
Yeah,
Um,
it's usually a smart idea to know kind of where you stand mentally when it comes to those types of things, and just, on the days where you're not having it, accept that you're not having it, and that you're gonna, you lose a little bit of MMR, so what? You gain it back
yeah,
in a couple of games.
yeah, no, for sure. Um, all right, you wanna share your highlight?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Helium Bunny is currently my formal rival, even if she will not accept that.
Okay. Yeah.
But we've been playing a decent number of custom games recently. Um, and I've finally been getting to a point where I feel pretty comfortable dealing with her. And we had a match on 2K, Now there's not much to talk about for the early and mid game. It was a pretty standard game between the two of us. You know, I'm trying to get damage done. She's trying to, well, she's also trying to get damage done, but you know, she's also trying to build up to this like spectacular Protoss army. And the game has ended up going to, you know, mass carrier, colossi, disruptor, and it was one of those games where I felt like I was just, you know, we were really going blow for blow. Um, I was getting like little advantages here and there. I was actually really pleased with myself because I was actually dealing with the mass sky toss pretty well and taking really good fights. I wouldn't say I was necessarily ahead. It seemed pretty even here and there.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were really, really going at it. Carriers would, you know, come up and like, you know, snipe a base or something, and I would immediately counter with a bunch of Vikings, ghosts, liberators, and whatnot. I would go and snipe a base, and she would push me back with the sky toss. Um, and this whole time, like, we're struggling, like, legitimately struggling to get to like those kind of high tech late game units, just because we were just going blow for blow the entire time. Um, I did hit a point where I felt like I had just crushed her army towards the middle of the map. And I was like, I was psyched up. I was just like, I'm gonna deliver the killing blow now. So I walk into that triangle third base, and I go in, I'm trying to get stuff done, and all of a sudden the army kind of appears from the right. And I realize that like I don't have enough to actually deal with this army right now. I'm just gonna go north and
Yeah.
try to escape it. Little did I know she had actually already set up a base there, and it was just like a wall of photon cannons and batteries. So I just
Yeah.
kind of walked into it. I'm like, I am dead. I'm about to lose literally everything here.
Yeah.
But I did lose that game, but it does feel really good whenever, you know, it's things that you struggled with before, you're starting to like learn about it and get better at it and better at dealing with it. And I was kind of upset early on, and I know I've been saying this a lot during my highlights, but
Sure.
I went back and I watched it and I'm just like, damn, that was a good game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also think that there's a lot of value too in, even if the entire 100% of the game is not perfect or the W doesn't quite get there, there's still a lot to be said about like playing at a level where you feel like you are on even footing with your opponent, right? For a period of time, you know? And even if you have that solid first 80% of the game and then you throw in the last 20%, like having that beginning is still really valuable and really important too. Like if you think about, how important the early game is just in the general scope of things, like that always it always feels nice.
Yeah, it really does. And Helium Bunny is somebody that I've been like striving to, you know, match for a while now.
Yeah,
She's
I
usually the
I am
one to.
familiar with.
Oh, I'm glad to see that the rivalry is well known.
I mean, she beats up on me too all the time. This is Helium Bunny appreciation time, but
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
a
there
good,
you go.
a great practice partner to wail upon you. But I'll get into that later.
Yeah, she really is a fantastic sparring partner. But yeah, it's so weird that recently a lot of my highlights have been like, yeah, here's a game I lost, but I'm pretty proud of it. This feels like a step in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I also think it's I really have learned to greatly enjoy playing with players who are a handful of MMR better than me. Just because it keeps me honest. Like it keeps me very focused on keeping the margins tight, right? Because there are a lot of games that I play that like you look at the replay and you're like, I did not deserve to win this, but we did it. And you can even sometimes find like the critical mistakes in your opponent, but if they're consistently better than you, like you just won't get those opportunities. I mean, it'll happen every once in a while, but it'll happen less often than it might on the ladder, and it's nice. I like being kept honest, even though it's painful in the moment.
Yeah, I actually had a couple of practice games 3 weeks ago. sometime like maybe about a month ago with
Yeah.
one of the archives hosts, Adraseth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he was talking to me about how it's actually kind of a beneficial relationship for both players, both the person who is like just a little bit higher and the person who is beneath them. The person who's lower actually is they're striving to like get better so that they can beat this other person, while the person with a little bit higher MMR and a little bit more experience, they kind of get an opportunity to go back and just kind of practice the more mundane stuff, like making sure that their macro cycles are correct, making sure that their vision is good, making sure that they're not going to die to something that could potentially be called stupid. It's
Yeah.
definitely a beneficial relationship for both players. Maybe more so for the person with a little bit lower MMR, but it actually does help both players, and it's always nice to be able to spar with somebody higher than you, but also somebody lower than you for that reason.
Oh yeah. I think having a proper practice environment is always beneficial, and it just it also takes a lot of that unknown out of it. Like, I mean, there's still a lot of unknown because your opponent can surprise you, but there's still a part of it where I'm like, well, this opponent could do something, but I'm pretty confident I know what it's going to be. It might change in its in the exact way it plays out, but you have somewhat of an expectation going in. Whereas in the ladder, you're like, this could be the most insane person I've ever seen play this game on the ladder. You really don't know. And that unknown actually goes a long way as far as keeping the mental battle in check, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, how has the ladder been for you, my friend?
Not great.
Oh, we got a different answer. I'm
Yeah, I
sorry
mean,
to hear that, though.
I could have said the same thing I always do, but not great. I mean, again, I'm kind of in a similar boat. Like, I haven't had that much opportunity to ladder. I got some family stuff going on right now. It's just taking some of my time and sleep quality. So it just becomes a little more burdensome. Um, and I think the thing that was really kind of a bummer. So I laddered a couple days ago, and I just died to like a couple. There were a couple games where I just died from not scouting anything, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I did that better, like 2 weeks ago when I was like, oh yeah, because then I just look at the replay and I'm like, oh, it's this. Well, if I knew that, I wouldn't have died, but I died. And it's just this kind of hindsight thing where it's like I was overseer scouting for a little bit there, but then as soon as I decided to focus on like drones on my third base, I just forgot that scouting's a whole thing and just made all these assumptions. And then two medevacs are in my main when I have like four roaches popping out one at a time, and I'm like, yeah, I'm dead. Okay, cool. Uh, so it's that constant just work on one thing, think you're okay at it, and then work on something else, and then everything else goes out the window. The droning was great, like, hey, the droning was good, but I was certainly dead. Uh, and I had a couple like that where it's just like, yeah, I just didn't have the read, and it the win evaporates. But again, not a whole lot of games on the ladder. A handful. I mean, there were some that were okay, um, but yeah,
Yeah, damn, dude. That's I'm sorry to hear that, but we'll all have our low points,
it
and we'll bounce back.
Yeah, well, and it's okay too, because like again, when I laddered on Monday, I knew it was gonna be bad because I slept really poorly.
Ah,
But
those
I
are the
was like,
worst days.
we're gonna do it anyways. We're gonna fire up the stream and we're gonna try our best. I was already like, we probably won't go that long, but I'm gonna try it. And yeah, then I'm just in the games on like full autopilot mode, and like just it's that sort of thing where like you see something but you don't like see it enough to react or do anything about it in the game, and I'm like, yeah, I'm dead. All right, GG. But it happens, and it's not the first time, and it probably won't be the last time for that kind of stuff. But hey, it's a new season. It's a new season. That was a surprise to me. I just had no frame of reference for the new season, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it's a new season. Same maps, but new season, whatever. So, here we are.
The funny thing was is that the new season dropped like the day after my birthday and I still forgot about it. And I think part of it's just because there wasn't a lot of fanfare with new maps
Yeah.
and stuff like that. That being said, ESL has something in the works, so there could be a new map pool, maybe not. We're not 100% sure, but I do have a question for you. You were talking about how you were focusing on one thing, you shifted your attention to another thing that you wanted to work on, and you felt that the first thing that you were focusing on kind of slipped. If you were to take yourself kind of out of the equation and have a very objective view of it, would you say that that first thing is still as bad as when you first started, or is it, would you say it's actually still better, but since you're not focusing on it as much, it's, maybe not quite as good as when you were focusing on it?
Yeah.
it's a bit of a question, but
Yeah. It's kind of hard for me to answer that when it's in generalities, but I'll be specific then to make it easier. So the thing I was focusing on is I'm trying to improve my gas to mineral balance in ZVT. So I have a tendency to take my first two gases a little early, or second two gases a little early, um, which is okay because it allows me to get 1-1, it allows me to get speed, and it allows me to make potentially like oh shit roaches if they're like pushing me immediately. Um, but I was just really focusing on like, okay, we're gonna get more drones on our third before we take those gases, just so we're a little more set up with the drone count and set up with the mineral income, so we can either decide to go into the gas from there, or we can drone a little bit more. So like it's just more well-rounded and better for spending my gas bank. And honestly, it went pretty well. I only had like two ZVTs to really apply it. But it felt good and it felt balanced. I wasn't floating, 400 gas too early. And it just felt smoother, but I did not do any scout. Like I didn't even do the like send a ling to die at the natural sort of thing, which would have been fine. But because again, I'm focusing on the drone count and I'm focusing on having a nice, tidy, clean economy, I just didn't do the stuff where it's like I have to actively look at my opponent, right? Like actively go into their base and see what they are doing. Because I also think that scouting is just one of those weird things because it's so active and it's so situational that it's really hard for me to apply it to everything all the time, right? I've seen people who with way lower MMRs where they're like, "Oh, it's 4 minutes, time to scout," and they do it every game, and I'm like, I want that. Like, I do not have that at all, and I think sometimes I'm just not set up for it. Sometimes I'm just not ready for the Viking to go the direction it goes when it pops out or whatever. Like, um, but I think it's also the fact that it's such an active thing, right? To actively fly something into your opponent's base is just something I don't have built in. So as soon as I direct my attention elsewhere, uh, it's gone. And I think maybe it was 2 episodes ago, like a month ago, I guess then, where I felt really cool because I was getting the read on anything that could kill me, right? The eco might not have been clean, but I was not dying, right? And again, I think we'll say this every time, but there are so many things that cause you to lose the actual loss, right? Versus all the other good stuff that happens. And, sometimes you just get beat up.
yeah, going back to the mineral to gas drone ratio,
Yeah.
that's probably one of those really intensive focus goals, I would imagine. Making sure that all of that is correct. So I imagine you probably would see slippage everywhere until you get that right. Like even the things that you have kind of on autopilot, if you're having to focus on making sure that you have, the proper number of drones and the proper number of mineral patches or Vespine geysers, like you're probably it's probably not going to be as much on autopilot anymore. But that being said, once you do get used to it, maybe, or not maybe, but definitely, some of the autopilot stuff is going to start to come back. It's going to start to feel more natural, and you're going to start to see more progression as that goes on.
Yeah, and the reason I'm focusing on this is I have noticed a trend in my ZVTs where it's like I'm trying to max out on roaches, right? And it's like, okay, I'm doing it, but I'm floating 400 gas with no minerals to spend. So there's zero progress as far as maxing out goes, right? So for me, I was like, I do this a lot. Like I do this in many different games, mainly ZVT, but it's one of these tweaks that I think will definitely help. But it's a piece of the puzzle, and it's also like I have to make sure I'm not going to overdrone and die.
Yeah, the overdroning, it can really be a ladder killer, huh?
Yeah. Well, I also think like if you're a low league Zerg, your goal should be to die from overdroning all the time because it's so much better to make too many drones and be like, "Whoa, that's a lot of drones," as opposed to be like, "Oh, I'm stuck on 35 making units and never going beyond like 50." Like that's so much worse in the scope of things, and especially for Zerg, just like the Neuro says this a lot too, but it's the always be droning rule. Like just always be droning until you go, oh, it's time to stop. You know, like because if you miss a beat in the droning, it just sets the stage a lot worse for you. And again, I had a lot of focus goals back in the day where it's just like, yeah, hold down the gas pedal, make drones till 55, and don't even blink, just get there, and it does wonders, honestly.
Yeah, just a quick anecdote about that. I have, swapped back and forth from Zerk a little bit over the past couple of years. I don't really make a concerted effort to, climb the ladder with my Zerk, but every once in a while I'll, pop in for a couple of ladder games. And it always shocks me how hard it is to actually get up to like 85 drones without just outright dying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I was developing too, I kind of think of it as like a level system that like you kind of want to advance to it. So like getting, there's some builds where you got to go, oh shit, I got to stop at 38 or whatever. And then you can get to like 50, 50, 50, 55, pretty okay. And then like 60, 66. And then like if you really want to keep going, you can go to like 70, 80. But like each one of those is also like you could potentially die if you jump a level too fast. But if you're really new, just hold it down. Just hold it down, and it's amazing because you do get a lot of money from it. So
Um, so I remember last episode you were talking about having some struggles in ZVZ. Do you have any updates on that or?
no, I've barely played any ZVZ. I've wanted to. I think I had maybe one or two on the ladder. Like I've been trying to ask people to for practice, but the people I've been asking are just like not there, and I'm like, okay, well, it's okay. But like I also like I just need the reps, and honestly, sometimes you can't control the matchups you get, and it is what it is, and I enjoy ZVZ too. Like that's the thing. So I'm kind of bummed when I get the game and it's an insta leave or something.
Yeah, it's actually kind of weird. I feel like I've been facing less Zergs recently. I really wish I could go back and check my statistics from last season, but I'm pretty sure like TVZ was my least played matchup, and I believe TVT was my most, which is a bummer, but
Yeah, well, it's, again, something out of our control.
yeah, we can't control who our ladder opponents are going to be.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I guess I'll go into my highlight here. Uh, oh yeah, this is what I wrote this down. So mine is also Helium Bunny practice related for this. So, that's why I was shouting her out earlier. I tweeted about this because I thought it was funny, but I asked Helium Bunny to void rate me, um, because I needed the practice. So, like, it's hilarious asking your friend to do the build that tilts you the most. But I was like, yeah, just make a Stargate and then make whatever you feel like is the best unit from that Stargate. I was like, if you want to surprise me with an Oracle, fine, but just make whatever you think is the best. And I was like, yeah, if you want to do double Stargate, go for it, because that's the one that beats me up the most and is an absolute nightmare for me to play. And she did a great job, and I got beat up, 5, 5, 4, 5, 5 or 6 games in a row. I'm also kind of trying to try the quote unquote big macro style in ZVP. But ugh, it's not fun. Like it's just not a great experience. And I tried doing some of the bigger macro plays and also trying to get a tight queen walk in because you do have to do the queen walk a little differently if it's double Stargate. Like the math with the void rate count of it being at a certain place when you get across is definitely different. So I was also kind of trying to polish that up as well. Um, but the only nice thing is that we played maybe 5 or 6 games and I lost all of them, but I won the last one with a good queen walk. So that was also like, all right, I think I'm good. I gotta, I gotta, I gotta, I gotta be okay. I gotta be okay with ending on a W, and it's you gotta take what you can, and it's also just I'm glad I was able to give it a shot versus that kind of style because again that kind of style too on the ladder is especially one of those where it's like, well, their fourth base is up. See you later. Like I'm out. Like I'm gone. So in these games, I mean, I still did leave after the early game and after like my big push had run its course. But I tried my best to hang in there and to just really focus on keeping the early game as strong as I can and try to leverage that in the best way possible. But it's an emotionally exhausting experience for sure to just have so many voids just zooming around and lasering everything and you know you kill 2 cannons and then the Sky Toss army shows up and you're like, well, it's time to go.
Yeah, for last season's in SGSL, I had one of the coaches play Protoss, and I told him like, do the dirtiest shit that you can to me. I like proxy void ray me, cannon rush, max packs, four gate, whatever's horrible and I'm going to hate. Just keep doing it until I can't take it anymore. And after a couple of games, I eventually like had my head in my hands, and I was just thinking, I don't want to talk to you for just a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Let's maintain radio silence for a couple days, just
no, not even a couple of days. I'm just like, I need just 1 minute, just 1 minute. Don't talk to me for 1 minute.
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. But a valuable service provided by friends,
Oh,
always
absolutely.
fantastic. Despite how painful it might be. But again, you know what? I do think the early game felt a lot better for me. I was really just trying to focus on basic stuff, just like getting the queen count up, getting the creep out, and kind of going from there. But then kind of floundered around for the last few minutes sometimes in those games because it's tough, man. It's tough out there to be a Zerg these days, but we're trying our best.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not making it any better with my help at pushes, but I'm sorry. um, so when you played that last game, had it been a pretty consistent style up to then, where you were like kind of really starting to tune in to the pace of the match, or was it just kind
Um,
of like, every once in a while she'd throw in a double Stargate, or every once in a
Yeah, I
while it
mean,
would just be
she
Phoenix?
did a yeah, she did a good job of keeping it pretty consistent. Some of the Stargate units might have changed, but for the most part, it was pretty void into disruptor, um, which is just like don't attack into this, which I think is also just a me thing too, where it's like I want to be aggressive at that stage, right? But if there's 2 disruptors, good luck, unless you got a hive, good luck, and I was really just trying to tighten up all just the general macro stuff because again getting a tight early game and getting a position which is good it just gives you more opportunities, right? And that's really what I was trying to go for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so do you want to hop into that low light?
um did I do my low light?
Wait, was that your low light?
No, that was my highlight.
Okay. Oh no, you didn't do
My
you
low
didn't do
light
your
was
low
the
light.
was the bad z well, okay. It was basically the games where I wasn't scouting and dying.
Okay,
I don't
okay.
know if I said that, but yeah, it's just it's this weird just surprise I'm dead sort of feeling.
I'm gonna be so ashamed if I go back and I'm editing this. I'm just like, oh, he did say that was his low light. Whoops.
That's all right. You're the editor. You have supreme control.
People are gonna be listening to the podcast version, just like, wait, this is way different from the pod.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no worries. You can hide your mistakes. It's fine.
I all right. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say about the low light, or do you want to go ahead and hop into the
Um,
topic?
no, not really. I mean, it's again. I'm also I've been here before as far as just like having lousy days and just lousy decision making in game, like where it's a bad decision, but you kind of do it. You kind of do it anyways, and it happens. And um, I will persevere.
Oh yeah, for sure. I believe in you, bud.
Thank you.
All right. So tonight's topic is going to be dealing with burnout. Now, as we all know, StarCraft II is it's a very taxing game. You're constantly having to think throughout matches. You're constantly having to shift the math every single time you find out something new about your opponent. And you can play multiple matches in a row, and it's a very taxing game. And like with all things in life, taxing things can cause you to become burned out, where you don't feel as interested in you know doing the things that you love anymore. And we're going to kind of talk about how to avoid it, signs of it. We're basically just going to go run through the whole gamut of dealing with burnout in StarCraft 2. So Captain Happa, do you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very common thing in the community. I don't know how many times, like, I mean, even having people in my chat who are like, "Hey, man, what's up? Yeah, I haven't played in 6 months. Great to see you." And I'm like, "Look, man, I completely empathize with that. Like, I get it. Like, if you don't have the space in your life to like really focus or really dedicate yourself to like improving, I get it. It's something I'm very aware of, and it's also I'm very aware of it too as a streamer because streaming StarCraft is also like this extra sort of pressure that keeps me playing probably more than I would if I didn't, right? I still enjoy uh, StarCraft in general, but having a stream that depends upon StarCraft is a little bit different as far as how I am forced to deal with that. But again, I am very empathetic to people who are like, yeah, I just really couldn't handle it, or like, oh, I just ran out of time, or oh, I got into something else. Like, I totally get it, and it's very common. Um, and again, as someone who's only been playing for like 3 years, I feel very young in the community as far as like my StarCraft age is. And there are people who, I talk to who have 10 plus relationships with this 10-year plus relationships with this game. And it goes through ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys, just like anything else. And um, I don't know what that's going to be like for me because I've only been playing for 3 years, right? And there have certainly been times when I'm more into it than others. But again, the stream puts a little bit of an external force upon me, right? Um, and I certainly feel it. I certainly feel sometimes you just don't want to play or you just don't have the same joy and excitement for playing. But that's that's just part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been one of those people who has taken extended breaks from StarCraft. Like staying away from it from like a month or two. I haven't done that as much since I started streaming, save for one time when I injured my wrist and literally just could not play.
Sure.
But yeah, it is pretty common where, people will, they'll play and they'll like actively be trying to improve constantly. And then at some point just like, you know what? I'm not enjoying myself anymore. I don't feel like doing this. This is, a waste of time. I'm going to just do other things. And it's not even necessarily a conscious choice. It's almost like a steady decline that you almost don't even realize until you just stop playing it. Like there would be times where, I would just start playing, maybe like 3 games a day and then 2 games a day and then just kind of maybe a couple games a week. And then all of a sudden, I'm thinking, man, I should really be playing some StarCraft, but you know what? I got other stuff I got to do. So it's, yeah, it's a very real problem that StarCraft 2 players can face.
Yeah, well, and I think, at the end of the day, we're still playing a video game, right? Like it should be enjoyable. Like it shouldn't be something that you have to force yourself to do. Um, but there is a time where it does sometimes feel like that, and even if, you just feel like your MMR is slipping, so you feel like like need this need to play to salvage your MMR or whatever. Like that can be kind of destructive in a way if you're forcing yourself into this kind of situation, or forcing yourself to play when you're not in maybe the best mental state. It's tough, man. And again, it's always, sometimes it's the real life stuff that you can't control, but it's going to ruin your experience in something that should be enjoyable. And that's kind of a bummer. That's
Yeah,
kind of a bummer that
absolutely.
you can't just space out and play and play StarCraft without thinking, right? But that's also why I love it, right? And that's also why it's challenging and interesting and dynamic and all that fun stuff, right?
Well, the funny thing is that even when I'm not having fun with StarCraft, it still scratches a like competitive itch that I have. Like I feel like I have to be competing. Or it acts as an outlet for just trying to drive yourself to be better at something. Um, that being said, StarCraft is definitely the game I come back to the most out of any other game. Like even if I do take a break, I always wind up coming back to StarCraft just to have fun or scratch that competitive itch. Um, so I actually did a little bit of research on this topic. I did find I was telling Captain Happa about this during the right before we started, but I found a really nice article about uh, competitive burnout. It was like 130 pages. I didn't have time to look through all of it, but I did grab an article from the Harvard Business Review or one by Monique Valcourt. And there's actually 3 components to burnout. You have exhaustion, there's cynicism, and then there's inefficacy. So I'll start off with exhaustion. And as I said before, StarCraft 2 is a very taxing game. You're constantly thinking, there's the emotions of wins and losses, you know, um a lot of the time you also have to study, and even if it's, kind of subconsciously, like you're watching, Dark versus Maru or something, you're just like, wow, okay, that's actually a pretty cool thing that Maru did. I'm going to kind of lock that away. But yeah, I mean, exhaustion can be caused by a lot of things in this game. Playing things that you just don't like playing against. Sometimes I just don't want to deal with, Disruptor Tempest and have to play these long extended games. Raven Mine, always exhausting to play against. So there's always that kind of possibility that you're going to be playing against something that you don't want. That's another thing that's going to tax your mind and make you feel a bit, tired mentally.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the exhaustion thing is something I very much relate to as far as these feelings, because it's also like whenever I play, I have an emotional gas tank, right? Like it has a certain capacity. Some days it's more full than others, but there are certain things that will happen that will drain that emotional gas tank, right? Sometimes it's more volatile than others, but it does have a very finite amount for me. And again, this also kind of relays into my streaming and my improvement and my ability to self-critique myself, because I do think the exhaustion has a lot to do with that. And this is something I just realized as you're talking to me about this, is that when I'm exhausted with the game, one of the first things I do is I stop looking at my replays
yeah, yeah.
because I am so exhausted at critiquing myself and so exhausted at being like, well, this shouldn't happen. Well, this is no good. Well, that's bad. Well, that's yeah, that just shouldn't happen. Don't do that. That's the one thing you shouldn't do. Like I'm so tired of doing that to myself, but that is an essential part of this kind of improvement, right? That is an essential part of understanding yourself as a player and understanding the road to the win, right? And um it's tough, man. And again, it's the first thing I cut. It's the first thing I cut when I'm tired. It's like, yeah, it's a bad fight. All right, next one.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I do the exact same thing. The moment, the tank is starting to run low, it's just like, I don't care. We're going to the next game. Or, I'll take like a very brief look at something and just be like, oh, this Protoss was on like 55 workers. I can't believe he did that. And it actually turns out that I killed like 40 just before
Yeah,
that number pops up.
yeah,
But yeah, it's weird that it is kind of like a gas tank that you kind of have to keep track of. And I feel like there is kind of a harm to, running on fumes, as it were. You know, because if you continuously like run yourself ragged, then chances are you're not going to be having as much fun. You're not going to give yourself enough time to kind of recuperate, um, or just have a chance to kind of clear out your mind and not think about the game. So if you're running on fumes and you constantly just keep playing, keep playing, keep playing, you're priming yourself for burnout.
yeah. Well, and I also think that there's a lot of situations where, again, it's like I'm ahead for most of the game, or like I'm in a really good spot for most of the game, and then you just get that throw just right at the end where it all just vanishes, and those are some big blows, right? Those ones really take a big hit out of the emotional supply I have, right? Like it's so brutal, especially when you know how like in the bag it was, And I think this is something too where it's like I'm a little burdened by my knowledge of the game at this point, where it's like I know that I had the pieces, I know that I had the steps to get to the win. It just didn't come together, and I lost. And it's definitely very demotivating. And I've ended ladder sessions many times just on the mere idea of facing another Protoss. Like uh, not even a specific type of Protoss, just a Protoss I don't know, right? Like the idea of a new one that I'd have to figure out, I can't do it. And I'm like, we're done. Let's call it a night. Like
Yeah, it really takes a toll on that gas tank if you throw a lead. I've definitely had nights where I'll have a fantastic game up to a certain point and then make, one massive mistake and then lose a game. The Helium Bunny game is kind of a good example of that, where I literally ran into a wall of photon cannons I didn't know was there. And yeah, I mean, we do have this kind of need to end on a good note as well, especially
yeah,
especially as streamers. Like we want to give like a good resolution to the stream,
sure.
but sometimes you just shouldn't. I mean, if you end on a loss, sometimes you just need to take the L and realize that I'm tired. I don't want to really look at this game anymore. Maybe I need to just log off and take a break.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I mean,
But
go ahead.
no, go ahead. No,
Well,
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that a lot of the times, like it's not necessarily, you know, it's not going to be something that's just sudden. Like you hit a certain point and you're just like, oh, I'm done with this. The exhaustion kind of adds up over time. So if you're running if you're running yourself ragged day after day after day after day, that's when you start to get this kind of what's the word? I guess I don't know. I'll think of a word, but you kind of start to pay for all of this, constant movement and constant thinking and constant, having to deal with the ladder, and it builds up over time.
Yeah, I also think sometimes, I mean, this is something that I've noticed recently for me is that I know a lot of the directions I need to improve in, but I also struggle with just trying to do all of them at once. And uh, sometimes I think even just having an outside perspective, just be like, hey, maybe that is a focus, because like I know the ways I throw games, but that still means I'm gonna throw them that way a couple more times before I really like make the changes, right? And um, it's just it can be very frustrating, you know.
Yeah,
The other thing I'll
absolutely.
say, and I think this was kind of on your list, is that this feeling of low accomplishment or this feeling that you are, somewhat powerless in your ability to play or perform, specifically perform like to win, that's something that really just it beats you up over time, and it's it's definitely one of those things that will burn you out and will get you to a spot where you just feel like there's no productivity, right? You feel like there's no way to achieve. And again, I always reflect on the times when I was in gold and plat, man, and every like 2 weeks I would hit a new milestone, because I was improving at a rapid rate, and it's a lot easier to improve at those lower leagues, and you can make leaps and bounds. And honestly, those leaps and bounds are so satisfying and so fantastic. Um, but here we are in Diamond, and the amount of things I have to work on is astronomically huge, and my ability to focus on the individual pieces is very challenging. And there are games where those weaknesses are exploited. There are games where they are not, and it's tough, man.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, the kind of feeling of inefficacy is it really can hurt you. Like it makes you feel like you just don't want to play the game anymore. And this is something that I've also struggled with, and I've struggled with this a great deal. It's just feeling like I'm not making improvements the way I want to. This is driving me crazy. I'm like, I wish I was doing better. And it really does kind of take a shift in perspective where you need to realize that, you're doing pretty well. Like regardless of your rank, like you're still going to be like above other, like you're still doing better than other people. You still are making improvements to your play. It's just might not be showing up as, readily as you want it to. Because I mean, remember, whenever you play on ladder, you're facing dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of different things throughout the course of a ladder session. Like the things that you've been working on aren't going to show up every single time unless it's something basic, like, basic and broad, like making sure you have enough workers or making sure you put your supply down on time. Um, I mean, other things to look at is, instead of kind of having your sense of accomplishment based on wins and losses, try and shift it to something else. I know a lot of people like to do focus goals. Shift it to that and trying to follow that as much as possible. Um, try and find things that make you feel successful rather than, just looking at wins and losses. If you can, shift your focus to, I'm going to hit at this time every single game and I don't care if I win or lose. If you can kind of see that, like, oh, my timings are indeed getting sharper during these games, then you'll have that sense of accomplishment and you won't feel as, bad about yourself for not supposedly um, doing well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's losing 50% of your games. It sucks, but it's kind of normal,
Yeah, I mean,
you know.
it's kind of the average.
And yeah, and losing 50% is maintenance, right? Like you're gonna stay right where you are, but it always feels bad. It's not fun, but that's also like why we enjoy StarCraft in a way. Like it's also why the challenge is so invigorating and exciting. Um, but so let me ask you this: like, you said you've taken a couple different long breaks. How is that, and how is it like coming back, or do you feel like you come back refreshed, or what's that like?
So usually when I was taking breaks, I never really completely left the StarCraft community. Like I would still be following, like bigger tournaments or whatever my friends were doing. Um, there's always it's really weird because there's always that kind of urge. Like I kind of want to play StarCraft, that pops up every once in a while. But I'll pull up the game and I'm just as soon as it pulls up, I'm just like, I nah, not today. But I would, I'd play other video games. I'd find other ways to kind of try and scratch that competitive edge. But, sometimes you play Halo 3 and it's just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. Like, there's always that one guy with the sniper rifle who's just going to pick my head off every single time. And,
Yeah.
after a while, that urge to finally come back to StarCraft really grabs me. And I'm just like, wow, I kind of really feel like playing StarCraft right now. And, I'll hop in. Usually I'll wind up playing, a couple of AI games and then hopping into ladder. And, I don't necessarily do great, but it feels wonderful to actually come back and be able to play after a long rest. Like you feel very mentally sharp even if you're losing. You feel like you're kind of on top of everything even if you're losing. And I mean, I kind of, even when I hurt my wrist, I kind of felt the same way coming back to StarCraft. I'm like, wow, this is what I've been missing. This is fantastic.
Yeah, I do think that the way the competitiveness in StarCraft, it's just so different than any other game, right? Like the satisfaction you feel from winning a game of StarCraft is like you feel like you have bested them in every way imaginable, right? Like it's a satisfaction that I have yet to receive in any other video game, right? And
Hmm.
um I myself, like the longest break I've taken since I've like really started playing, it's probably like a week or 2 weeks, like if I'm traveling or like something like it's I've never really had a really long break, but I do imagine myself still enjoying to watch it and to engage with it because I also think that like there's always cool pro stuff going on and um I haven't gotten to the point where I feel like I really need a break, but this is the other weird thing, and I don't know if this is just me, but like if I take like 4 days off, like not a lot, but it's enough. When I come back, I feel weirdly refreshed in a way. Like
Oh yeah.
my eyes and my decision making is just a little tighter, and I don't know, like there's also this thing in StarCraft where there's a lot kind of related to like your fitness as a player, like the physicality of StarCraft just really means that there are certain things that your hands have to do automatically, and there's a certain amount of fitness that is required to execute things, right? Regardless of your level, that fitness is sometimes fleeting, and I think it's sometimes it's also one of these things where it can make you kind of anxious coming back, right? Because you know that your fitness is not going to be there, and you know that you are probably not going to have the best day. And I think that's always something that's kind of in the back of my mind.
That feeling does occur when you come back, but it's fairly fleeting, I would say. Once you start playing some games and getting back into the groove of it, that kind of disappears fairly quickly. It might be different if you don't play many games to start with, even before the break. Like you're probably still going to get, that ladder anxiety that's going to build up and it'll probably, persist for a little while. But at least in my experience, I do get ladder anxiety after a long break, but it kind of goes away fairly quickly once I get back into that groove.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's interesting. Um, and for me too, it's like ZVP is a struggle right now, and I miss the invigoration that we get from the big patch, right? And again, I've only been around for a handful of those big patches, right? Like, but it's exciting, man. I miss it so much. Like I was reminiscing it, and even the battle cruiser change, which in its early days was not that fun. Like in its early days was not fun. But then once they kind of went back in and they tweaked it, it was fine. It's fine. It's different. It's exciting. It's something you have to learn how to deal with, and it's something that just changes it. And again, the early days of battle cruisers were not cool. Like that was not a fun time. But then once it's like, okay, we figured out how battle cruiser openers work and how to deal with it and how to live with it, I'm fine with it. It's something that's just there and it's part of the game and it feels fine to me. And um I miss the big shakeup. And honestly, ZVP to me feels so stale and so just uninteresting. And I still play it, I still engage in it, but I just don't have the same um excitement towards it, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like monotony lead can definitely lead to burnout if you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, you know. Every game is going to kind of necessitate like a 12 pool or a queen walk versus Protoss. Um just before I say anything else on that though, there's two ways this is going to go. Either ESL is going to start recommending some balance changes. I don't know quite how that works, but I know there's been whispers everywhere at this point that ESL is about to do something big.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is going to be balancing through maps, which isn't as prominent in StarCraft II since we're used to the kind of the big patches that come out, but it's how Brood War has been doing it for years and years and years now. Actually, yeah, I think about 20 years now. Their last balance patch was a long, long time ago. That being said, though, yes, the monotony could lead to a feeling of burnout. Like you're not doing anything new, you're not doing anything fresh, and that kind of was that's one thing that can kind of keep the mind alert and give you that kind of hit of dopamine. If you hit, if you're doing this, playing the same game over and over and over again, like it starts to feel like a chore almost. That's why
Yeah.
you'll see players from other games, it's just they log in because they literally have to do chores. The Destiny 2 pops to mind because they always have to go in and do like their dailies or whatever the hell they're called. It's been a while since I
Yeah.
played.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it almost starts to feel like a chore and nobody wants to do chores. Like this is your time to compete, this is your time to relax for some people. Like this is when you were supposed to be like engaged in something, and monotonous chores are not engaging.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if we're gonna get a big balance patch. I would be happy with a minor balance patch just because
Me too.
it's
Me
it's been
too.
so long. Just please, anything. Like like that's all I would dream
Every
for. And again,
everybody tweet ESL right now. Just tell them, just quit with the bullshit. Just tell us what's going to happen, please.
yeah, but it's also like we've never been here before as a community, right? And I would love just some tweaks. You know, they don't have to be too crazy, but if they are crazy, hey, I'm okay with it because honestly, we've been on this patch for a while, and I do definitely feel that there's a lot of. I mean, it's also the maps. We've been on the maps for a while too, which is also a staleness kind of thing. But it's also like you load into a game on a certain map with a certain matchup. You're like, I have a good feeling on how this can play out. I will always be surprised, but I have a good idea of the gist of the objectives, and that's just from repetition and it's from players wanting to do what's good on certain maps in certain situations, and that's the reality of it.
Yeah, nowadays, whenever I load onto Romanticide versus a Terran or Protoss, it's just like, oh God, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do think it like I do like the idea of balancing with maps. I just think it's challenging for StarCraft 2 because I think there's a pretty decent delay between maps being made and implementation. And I think sometimes it's hard to chase down the meta in that kind of way. But hey, if that's all we get for balance is maps, I'm for it. Like I but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah,
I don't
I,
know. I have no
I
answers.
wish, I wish I had answers. I really do. But I guess that actually is a good stepping point into how to prevent burnout. Now that we've been talking about how there's a potential that we could be stuck on this balance patch and map pool forever. So I feel like the biggest thing that you can do is just take a break. There's literally no harm in taking a couple of days or a week or a month or however long you need. Just take a break, give your brain some time to process. Kind of clear out some of the clutter that StarCraft II can put in there. Do some other stuff. Like there's literally no shame in you taking a break. You just take a break. Just take a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that too. Because I also think like if you find yourself in that situation where you are forcing yourself to play, like I'm sure there's something better you can be doing with your time. Like I know we're all tryhards, right? And I know like we all want to, try our best and win and all that. But if you're forcing yourself if you're forcing yourself to be antagonized by the game, it's I don't think it's worth your time. And that I haven't gotten to that point, but maybe uh it's something I'd be aware of, and it's something I try to think about before it gets to that point. But um, it's tough. And again, I'm always empathetic to people who are like, "Yeah, I haven't touched the game in 2 months." I'm like, "Good for you!" Like, good for you, good for you. Hey, thanks for coming by the stream so you can experience my emotions vicariously. But it's tough, man.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to it doesn't even have to be a long break. Like if you're really that engaged with StarCraft, it doesn't even have to be a long break. Just, take some time to do some other stuff and, StarCraft's going to be there waiting for you when you come back.
Yeah, well, I also think too, like, us as ladder tryhards too. It's like we've been bitten, right? Like the virus. It's within us at this point, right? Like, so I think myself, I know that if I took an extended break, which I'm actually kind of considering because I'm gonna be like away from my setup potentially for a little bit. Um, like if I were to do a break, I know I would get the itch to play. Probably within pretty quickly, and I think a lot of us kind of share that, or at least feel that great satisfaction of wanting to do something that is challenging and something that is um, very tough. And uh, it's a tough game. It's a tough game, but that's what makes it wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, what else can I Honestly, some of this stuff I've already kind of gone over.
I
shifting
mean,
your
I think
shifting your perspective to make to, if you're feeling kind of like you're grinding out games and you're looking at win loss or MMR loss, just shift your perspective, look at something different. And like Dan said before, it never hurts to, ask for friends to look over stuff because that's another perspective you can take advantage of.
yeah. Well, and the the other thing too is we kind of mentioned this too, but setting short-term goals or setting low stakes goals, I think is very helpful, right? A goal where it's like not live or die, and it's something where it's like, hey, I'm just gonna play 4 games today or whatever, or hey, I'm just gonna get mineral mining on my third base. Like that's it. Set the bar low, because I think there's a lot of value in that, and I think it can go a long way as far as getting that spark back, if you will.
Yeah, I mean the low stakes goals are definitely. I mean, you're still engaging yourself in StarCraft, but you're not driving hard to get those goals. There's also other things you can do to consume StarCraft content if you're still like feeling like playing it, but you don't want to wind up burning yourself out. You have stuff like the campaigns and co-op. That's always fun to play. Every once in a while, I'll hop onto the ladder and do something called double unit disasters, where I randomly pick 2 units from the arsenal and just have to play with those units. And because I'm going into those games, I'm like, I don't care if I win or lose. Like, this is just content at this point. Like, this is fun. If I
Yeah,
win, that's awesome. If I lose, I had Raven battle cruiser. How am I supposed to win with that garbage?
yeah. No, I think there's a lot to be said for trying things that are fun or weird or kind of silly. Um, but I will say this, like I've noticed this before too, where it's like sometimes I'm in a stream or something, and it's someone maybe higher ranked than me, but it's this like they're expressing frustration in how they're playing or their feelings about the game or something, and then someone in chat is like, just do Bly builds, just cheese every game, and it's like, bro, I don't want to. Like like I get it. And that can be a helpful thing. It can be helpful to try different builds or to try weirder things or to try out their ideas. But if you're telling that to someone who's already like frustrated with the game, it is so annoying to just be like, I no, like I don't want to do Bly builds. Like there's a reason I don't want to, like, and it's just so funny. And again, it can work for some people, but for me, when I read that or when I see someone read that who's venting about the game or venting about the matchup, it's like just proxy hatch every game. It's like no, like that's kind of dumb. Like it kind of it's like that's not how I want to play. Like I don't want to choose to be that kind of play style. And that's just me. But when it's a suggestion that it's just like such an easy thing to like, yeah, just learn how to proxy hatch every game. It's like, no thank you.
We could do an entire episode on Twitch chat, honestly. That would that would probably be a really funny episode.
Oh, sure, I got stories. Like
I do too, yeah.
I could probably get a lot of bullet points,
We
just
we could
things
be
I've seen, things people have been said to me, things I've seen said to other streamers. Like it's a whole thing. But
we could yeah, we could do like a 3 hour episode on that. That'd actually be kind of fun. I might put that on the list.
yeah,
But yeah, like sometimes sometimes it's hard to say because there are times when like I'm willing to switch to another build to try and get results. Like recently with TVP, I swapped over to the 2-1-1 because I wanted a faster third, and I started seeing results with it, and then immediately stopped seeing results with it. So I switched back to 3-1-1, and now I'm on
yeah,
3 racks, and then mixing in some 3-1-1. But it is exhausting to have people tell you just like you can't win with that build. This is the build that you need to use. And
yeah,
it's not especially at our level, it's just not as blatantly false. Like
yeah,
um sure that might be a very powerful build, but you don't have to do that build exclusively. Um and this is a build that I continue to have success with, maybe not today, but I've been doing this build for a while now and I can still get decent wins with it. And a lot of the time it also comes down to like our timings aren't perfect, like we're diamond.
yeah,
So like as we tune in those timings and we become quicker, we hit faster, we hit harder, the build's still going to do really well. But then yeah, you still get those people who are just like, well, if you had scouted here instead of here, and it's just like, shut up.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's like, oh, I do this like weird, cheeky, insane speedling thing that depends on hiding it and your opponent completely misreading it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. And like, I'm glad that works for you, but I don't want to do a build, that relies on my opponent being asleep at the wheel or something like that. Like it's just different. And again, if I were to decide like, hey, I'm gonna play like Bly every game, that would have to be a decision that I would want to make, myself. And it's just funny because I think everyone like I don't know. It's normal to get burnt out, but it's also normal sometimes to get weird suggestions on how to deal with burnout. And everyone's going to be different. The things that work for some people aren't going to work for others, and you just got to kind of feel it out.
Yeah, I also want to preface it that usually Twitch chat has the right
Right
they're
intentions.
the right intentions. Yeah, they have the right intentions, just poor execution.
Yes. Well, and it's also just like, again, sometimes it's they're trying to be helpful, but the way they say it and the way I read it,
Yeah, it's sometimes it's just like, yeah, you what? Like, why don't you have your third command center down now, you fucking moron? I'm just like,
yeah,
he's out of line, sir, but he has a point.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a challenge, but I mean, I think that's having this self-regulation too, and just kind of knowing when you need a break, I think is probably also just a really important thing for dealing with it. Um, and the same way it is for managing tilt and ladder anxiety, like they all kind of share a common thread, I think, and a lot of it is understanding yourself and understanding your ability to cope and your your so-called emotional gas tank, and how to deal with it. Because again, you're going to get a lot of curveballs, and you're going to get things that are annoying, and there might just be a time where you're just not prepared to play the game.
Yeah, actually, speaking of that, like that's been kind of the general thing for me this past week. Now, the burnout that I'm experiencing is not StarCraft II. Like I want to play StarCraft II really bad, but I've been having a lot of other life stuff come up recently, and it's just I don't have the energy to play StarCraft despite me really wanting to play StarCraft. So, there's been a lack of streams and a lack of laddering and whatnot. But I felt like it was very important that I not stress myself out even more with StarCraft and then wind up hating the game because of stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
taking
definitely.
burnout from other places in my life and then immediately trying to force myself into be in, competitive shape. And then I guess the best way to put it is just like drag that burnout into StarCraft and then, not want to play for a while.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that's good that you're taking the important steps to preserve this wonderful game in your life, because you know it means a lot to you, and I feel the same way too. And it's something that uh it's a tenuous relationship sometimes, and you gotta it's good for understanding yourself. And I think that's the other thing is me learning StarCraft. I have learned a lot about myself, and a lot about how I react to things, and a lot about how to manage those things. And um, it's great.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. All right. With that being said, do you have anything else that you'd like to add in Captain Happa?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think just to summarize, it's like, yeah, you gotta kind of keep track on it. I think breaks are really helpful. I think short-term goals can be really helpful, but also you just got to kind of be adaptive in a certain way, and there are going to be times where StarCraft might not be able to fit, or you might not be able to apply yourself as much as you would like to. And that's part of the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, take care of yourself, know what your limit is, and don't be afraid to take a break if you're feeling a little bit of burnout. That's perfectly okay. With that being said, we can go ahead and hop into in-show stuff. So, as you guys know, the climb is on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Definitely go and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps drive us up the StarCraft 2 related charts. Give us a follow on Spotify. Give a subscription on the YouTube channel. With that being said, Dan has a link tree that will be in the comment or the chat currently. Definitely go there, subscribe to his YouTube channel. He does fantastic stuff on Twitch. Really fantastic guy. Love doing this with him. Go ahead and put my socials in there as well. You can follow me on Twitter, YouTube. Uh, yeah. What do
Yeah,
you have going
I just
on?
Well, I just wanted
Oh,
to say that, like, I love doing this. I love doing this podcast. I'm having a great time. It's fantastic. I'm very proud of like how the episodes come out, and like I think it's fantastic. And it warms my heart because I've had a couple people say nice things to me, or even say like, "Hey, I'm laddering again," which is just like super
wait,
cool.
no
Or like,
shit, really?
oh yeah, someone in my Discord was like, "Hey, I'm starting to kind of try to ladder again," and I'm like, "That's awesome.
Oh,
I'm so
that's really
thrilled."
cool.
Like, I love the ladder. I know it's brutal sometimes, but it's also like, to me, it's like the purest form of rigorous exercise. It's like this very scary thing, but it's something that can teach you a lot about yourself. And just hearing that some people are dipping their toes back into it, it's amazing. I'm so happy that it's a wonderful side effect of having these great conversations with you. So
Yeah.
again, thanks for everybody listening and supporting. It's really nice, and I'm glad you enjoy.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and co-hosting with me, man. It's always a joy and a pleasure to have you on here with me.
Oh yeah, I love these talks.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's going to be it for us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and put us into the waiting room while I look for a stream to raid. So stick around for just a second. Go ahead and say hello to whoever we raid. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion. And guys, please, good luck. Have fun out there. Keep your mentality in check. And we will see you later.